My husband's parents sold their restaurant and announced they're taking over my kitchen. When I told him I felt trapped, he replied, "This is how families bond." For weeks later, I found their family recipe book, and my name wasn't in it, but a price tag was. My name is Alina. I'm 37 years old, married to Dorian, who's 39. We live in Ballard, Seattle, in a 2-story Craftsman that I poured my heart and savings into before we got married. I'm a freelance editor, mostly working on indie memoirs and lifestyle blogs. Dorian works as an accountant at a mid-tier firm near South Lake Union. We'd been married almost 9 years. We didn't have kids, we weren't opposed to it, just hadn't decided. Life was calm. Predictable. Sometimes too predictable. Until Mauro and Celeste, Dorian's parents, decided to retire. They ran a Mediterranean restaurant called Lucerna in Queen and for over 3 decades. People loved it. It wasn't fancy, but it was full of charm and had a loyal crowd. Dorian basically grew up in the back room. He'd tell stories about stealing olives or folding napkins under the counter while his mom kneaded dough. I liked his parents. At first. We got along. I admired their work ethic. They'd hosted us a few times for big meals, and Celeste always complimented my baking. But we weren't close. And I'd never imagined they'd be living with us. When they sold the restaurant, they didn't just tell us. They showed up. One Tuesday in early September, I opened the front door after a client call and there they were. 2 large suitcases. Celeste in heels. Mauro with a sourdough starter in a mason jar like it was his firstborn. We sold the place. Celeste said, stepping in like the house was already hers. We thought it'd be the perfect time for a little family togetherness. I thought they meant a visit. Maybe a long weekend. I was wrong. They meant move in. Indefinitely. The explanation? They said they were downsizing and not ready to stop cooking and excited to bring the heart of Lucerna home. Apparently our home. At first, I kept telling myself it would be temporary. Dorian reassured me. They're figuring stuff out. Just a few weeks. But the signs were there early on. Celeste immediately reorganized the kitchen. She replaced my spices with her labeled glass jars. She brought her own knives. My cookbooks disappeared into storage bins in the garage. Mauro filled the basement fridge with sauces. They installed a wall-mounted rack for their pots. Every corner of the kitchen changed. Even the sound of my house changed. Clanging. Chopping. Celeste humming over simmering pots. Mauro yelling instructions from the hallway like he was still in his restaurant. I tried to be patient. They were adjusting. But the longer they stayed, the more I started to feel like a guest in my own house. One night, I told Dorian. I don't feel like I live here anymore, I said, folding my arms across my chest while he brushed his teeth. He looked at me in the mirror and shrugged. They're just trying to feel useful. You know how they are. I didn't push. I should have. But I didn't want to fight. I tried to find little corners of peace. I started working upstairs more. Avoided the kitchen during their prep hours. I bought a hot plate to cook in our guest room, just so I could boil water without commentary. Then came the family meetings. Mauro started calling them every Sunday. We'd sit at the dining table, me, Dorian, Celeste, and Mauro, and they'd talk about their new plan, starting a home-based catering business. Lucerna lives on, Mauro would say. Celeste would show off recipe cards like blueprints. We can take small orders. Weddings, baby showers, community events. We've got the kitchen, the skills, the branding. The branding? We didn't have a logo. This wasn't even legal yet. But they talked like it was already happening. Dorian? He was thrilled. He loved the idea of helping his parents build something together again. I wasn't consulted. I wasn't even acknowledged, really. They started testing recipes using my equipment, without asking. My mixer, my baking sheets. Celeste once used up an entire bottle of my expensive vanilla extract, the one I'd bought from a small batch supplier in Vermont. When I mentioned it, she laughed. "Oh, honey. We're all cooking together. What's mine is yours, and yours is mine." Except it wasn't. I wasn't included in the planning. I wasn't given credit. And one day, I noticed they were posting on Facebook, as Lucerna Catering, using photos of my desserts. I brought it up to Dorian. "I feel like I'm being used," I said. He didn't even look up from his phone. This is how families bond. I stared at him for a full 10 seconds. It felt like someone had flipped a switch in my brain. This wasn't bonding. This was exploitation dressed up as tradition. And then it happened. For weeks after they moved in, I was digging through a drawer in the garage, looking for one of my notebooks. I pulled open an old filing cabinet Morrow had borrowed from storage. That's when I found it. A leather-bound book. Faded, worn. Titled in gold script, Lucerna, Family Recipes and Heritage. I opened it. The first few pages were handwritten. Morrow's handwriting. Each recipe was labeled with a name: Celeste's lamb stew, Dorian's fig tart, even a risotto recipe from Morrow's brother. Page after page of memories. Until I found mine. Cherry clafoutis. But not with my name. It was labeled Alina's, bridal tier $6.25 per serving. There were margin notes too. Cost per tray. Profit projection. A crossed-out version with "add orange zest" scribbled next to it. I flipped further. There were even inventory lists. My knives. My mixer. My bunt pans. All labeled with a little a and a value. I couldn't believe it. I wasn't family in that book. I was a resource. I took photos of the pages. And I sat with it. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just shut down. That night, Dorian noticed I wasn't talking much. He asked what was wrong. I told him I'd found the recipe book. He didn't say much. Just muttered, "They didn't mean it like that." That's when I realized he knew. He knew, and he didn't stop them. He was okay with it. And that was worse than anything Morrow or Celeste had done. I stopped cooking. Not in a dramatic, arms-crossed protest way, but quietly. Strategically. I pulled back. I stopped buying ingredients. I didn't touch the oven. No pies cooling on the counter. No quiet evenings spent experimenting with new glaze techniques or trying out old Polish recipes from my grandmother's notes. I just let the silence of my absence speak. Of course, Celeste didn't notice. If she did, she didn't care. She was too busy scheduling tastings with people she called potential clients, but who mostly just looked like old restaurant regulars she'd guilt into stopping by. Morrow had his own little corner in the basement where he measured flour and simmered stocks like he was still running a commercial kitchen. The man even installed a camera over the stove, so they could document techniques for their supposed future cooking channel. Dorian? He drifted further into their orbit, smiling in group selfies they posted under the new Lucerna at Home Instagram account. I wasn't in a single one. I started noticing little changes in him. He began dressing like his father, button-ups instead of hoodies. He started talking in business metaphors, like synergy and expansion potential. He even cut out carbs, which was wild considering the man used to down 3 slices of sourdough with every dinner. I'd wake up and he'd already be in the kitchen, slicing fennel next to Celeste. He'd sip espresso like he was born in Naples. I knew him better than anyone, and yet, somehow, he looked more like them every day. Then came the catering license conversation. I overheard it from the hallway. Celeste was whispering with Dorian while Morrow was on speakerphone with someone from the Department of Health. They were trying to apply for a license using our home address. Our address. No one asked me. I confronted Dorian that night, gently. "You're using our home for a business. Don't you think we should have talked about that?" He sighed, like I was being difficult. It's just paperwork. It doesn't change anything. It changes everything, I said, voice steady. This is my house too. His eyes flicked away, then back. You're being territorial. I laughed. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because I couldn't believe the irony. I was being accused of being territorial over my own territory. From that point on, something cracked in me. I started documenting everything. Every use of my property, knives, pans, stand mixer, my grandmother's enamel bowls. Every photo they posted that featured food I had made or plated. I cataloged it all. Quietly. Carefully. Meanwhile, the catering business grew. They started taking orders, under the table, of course. Small events. A baby shower here. An office lunch there. Celeste even got custom aprons made with the new Lucerna logo. She gave one to Dorian, one to Morrow, and told me she hadn't ordered mine yet because they'd run out of budget. Budget. That stung more than I admitted. But the final straw wasn't even something big. It was a Wednesday morning. I had a 10 a.m. Zoom meeting, and I went downstairs early to make tea. Celeste was already there, rolling out dough like it was a goddamn production kitchen. I tiptoed around her and opened the cabinet above the stove, where I kept my loose-leaf teas. Gone. Replaced by giant plastic bins of dried herbs and labeled spices. When I asked where my tea went, Celeste didn't look up. Oh, I think Morrow put it in one of the basement crates. We needed space for the saffron and dried mint. She didn't even apologize. I stood there for a long time. Longer than I meant to. That was the moment I realized, I didn't feel like I was living in my house anymore. I felt like I was trespassing in a commercial kitchen. I stopped going downstairs entirely. Started eating out. Ordered takeout. Drove to cafes just to drink tea in peace. My bedroom became my entire living space. I showered in the guest bathroom because Morrow started drying pasta on racks in the main one. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. And the person I married? He didn't either. It was mid-November when I received a message on Instagram from a woman named Kiara, a lifestyle blogger I used to follow. She'd been invited to a Lucerna private tasting and wanted to tag me in her post since she thought I was part of it. The post had 6 photos. 5 dishes. All served on my stoneware. The last photo was a cherry clafoutis, my recipe, garnished with orange zest and almond slivers, plated exactly how I used to serve it. The caption? Lucerna is back. Authentic Mediterranean catering with a modern twist. Their cherry clafoutis is divine. Can't wait to see them grow. I stared at the screen for a full minute. That dessert was mine. Not inspired by. Not adapted from. Mine. And they served it, photographed it, branded it, without a single mention of me. It wasn't the first time, but it was the last time I'd stay silent. I replied to Kiara politely. Told her I appreciated the tag, but that I wasn't involved in Lucerna and hadn't contributed to any recent menus. She responded quickly, confused, even apologetic. It wasn't her fault. But she'd accidentally confirmed what I already knew. To them, I wasn't a partner. I wasn't even a person. I was an ingredient. After Kiara's post went live, I noticed a ripple effect. A couple more food bloggers started tagging Lucerna catering. One called their fig tart a fresh take by the next generation of the Lucerna legacy. Another praised their signature clafoutis, saying it was like something out of an old family cookbook. My stomach twisted reading that. The clafoutis wasn't out of their family cookbook. It came from mine. From years of trial and error, of folding cherry halves just right, of aging my vanilla beans in bourbon for that specific warm depth. But I didn't say anything publicly. Not yet. Instead, I kept collecting. I started saving screenshots. Tracking every post. Every use of my plates, my linens, my exact plating style. I even printed them out. Not because I planned to sue, but because I wanted something real in my hands, something to remind me I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't being dramatic. That what I felt, erased, overlooked, used, wasn't imagined. Dorian didn't seem to notice my silence anymore. Or maybe he did, and just decided it was easier to ignore. He spent his evenings helping Celeste write copy for their menu guide. He stopped coming to bed at the same time as me. He started calling me babe less, and saying Alina more. Like I was just another person in the house. There was this moment, a stupid small one, that stays in my head. I was in the laundry room, folding towels, and I overheard Celeste on the phone with someone. She was laughing. No, it's just the three of us. We run everything together, tight, simple. Family only. Family only. I don't even think she meant it cruelly. But it hit me like a slap. She didn't see me as family. Never had. To her, I was Dorian's wife. The editor. The one with the kitchen they could use. I started taking time away from home. I'd spend hours at Gasworks Park, even in the cold. I'd bring a thermos of soup, sit on the old cement walls overlooking Lake Union, and just breathe. Some days I'd go to Pike Place and watch vendors yell over fish and tourists clutching hot cider. I'd sit in a corner cafe near Capitol Hill with my laptop open, not doing anything, just needing the feeling of being somewhere people didn't expect me to be productive for them. I didn't tell anyone where I was. Not even Dorian. He never asked. Then came the invoice. I was going through the mail when I saw an envelope addressed to Lucerna Home Catering, but it had our home address. Inside was an itemized invoice from a supplier. 30 pounds of semolina flour. 6 quarts of olive oil. Dozens of disposable catering trays. A full commercial-sized order. And it was billed to our shared bank account. My heart thudded. We had a joint account for bills. Just bills. We'd agreed on that years ago. Everything else stayed separate. I went online. And saw several more transactions. Hundreds of dollars. Pulled without my knowledge. Used for their ingredients, their marketing, their new website, which, by the way, had a photo of Celeste and Dorian standing in my kitchen, smiling in front of my blue tile backsplash that I personally installed during lockdown. I didn't confront Dorian right away. Instead, I opened a separate account. I changed all my freelance payments to go there. I pulled half of what I'd contributed to the joint account and moved it. Not all of it, just enough to feel like I had a little air in my lungs. And then I emailed my lawyer friend, Kaya. I didn't ask about divorce. Not yet. I asked her about property lines. Ownership. Boundaries. Hypothetically, I wrote, if someone uses your kitchen to run a business you didn't agree to, and they profit from your equipment, do you have any legal standing? Her answer was cautious. But pointed. If it's your property, and they're using it for commercial purposes without consent, you absolutely have standing. Especially if your items or likeness are used in branding. Keep documenting. Don't confront yet. So I did. That weekend, Celeste hosted a private dinner in our dining room for a retired food critic and his wife. Dorian helped plate. Morrow played soft jazz. I stayed upstairs, silent, listening to the clink of forks and the muted hum of polite laughter floating up through the vent. And then, about halfway through dessert, I heard it. This is all family, Celeste was saying. We're a tight crew. We've all contributed something. Some of these recipes are even based on my daughter-in-law's old baking. She's not part of the day-to-day, but we like to honor her flavor style. Honor her flavor style. I don't know why that phrase got to me more than anything else. Maybe because it sounded like something said about a dead artist. Like my creativity was a relic. A garnish. Not a person. Not a living, breathing woman upstairs, listening to them talk about her like a garnish. I didn't sleep that night. And the next day, I went down to the kitchen and looked around, not at what they'd done to it, but at what used to be mine. The worn edge of the butcher block island where I'd once chopped vegetables while singing to Florence and the Machine. The apron hook I'd installed next to the fridge because Celeste said it was a tripping hazard on the pantry door. The spice drawer I had built exactly to fit my glass jars, and now held Moro's industrial tins. It felt like standing in a museum. A museum dedicated to a person who used to live here. Me. The very next day, I finally spoke to Dorian. I waited until he got home from a meeting, one of those fake business lunches with a retired vendor from the old restaurant, and sat him down on the edge of the bed. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just said, "You need to tell me the truth. Do you even see me as part of this family business?" He blinked, confused. "What are you talking about? You've spent the last 2 months using my space, my tools, my recipes, my photos. My life. And the only thing I ever hear from your parents is how I'm not involved. So, I'm asking you, am I in this? Or am I just convenient?" He hesitated. Long enough to answer without words. Then, finally, he said, "I think you've made it clear you don't want to be part of it." That was it. No apology. No, we should talk more. No, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Just blame. I nodded. And I made a decision. It took 3 days to set everything in motion. I worked in complete silence. Polite, even cheerful when needed. I smiled at Celeste when she asked if I could move my laptop so she could use the dining room for an event planning session. I said of course. I even brought them coffee. But during those 3 days, I also filed a cease and desist order through Kaya, my lawyer friend, naming Lucerna at Home Catering for use of my intellectual property, including 3 original dessert recipes and 6 photographic images without consent. Submitted a zoning complaint to the City of Seattle for operating a commercial food service out of a residentially zoned, unlicensed kitchen. Notified the Washington State Department of Revenue that Lucerna was operating for-profit events without registering as a business entity. Emailed the Department of Health with photos and proof of unlicensed food preparation from inside a non-commercial kitchen. Removed all of my cooking and baking equipment from the kitchen, including my mixer, utensils, high-end knives, pans, glassware, and ceramics. Everything. I boxed it up while they were gone one afternoon. Locked it in the upstairs guest room, and replaced it with dollar store stand-ins I labeled Property of Alina, not for commercial use. Then I waited. It didn't take long. 3 days after I submitted everything, a city inspector knocked on our door. Celeste answered. I watched from the stairs as her smile faded. The inspector explained, clearly and calmly, that there had been multiple complaints about unlicensed catering services, improper food storage, unauthorized kitchen use. He asked to inspect the space. Celeste, flustered, called for Moro. Moro tried to be charming. "Ah, it's just a family kitchen. We're just sharing food among friends." The inspector showed him a printed screenshot, an event flyer that they had posted. With prices. With RSVPs. With my address. The inspection lasted an hour. I stayed upstairs the entire time, just listening. Later that day, the cease and desist paperwork arrived via courier. I had it delivered during dinner. I heard the knock, heard Celeste open the door, and then the rustle of pages. She actually gasped. "What the heck is this?" I heard her ask Moro. Dorian came upstairs soon after. I was in the guest room, reading. He didn't knock, just barged in. His face was red. "What did you do?" he demanded. I didn't look up right away. Just turned a page and said, "I did what any business owner does when someone tries to profit off their work without credit." "You reported your own family?" "I reported people who used my work, my home, and my equipment without permission. If they wanted to make me part of the family, they should have treated me like I belonged." He didn't say anything. Just stared at me. And then, I said it. "You need to ask them to leave." "What?" I'm not asking anymore. You invited them in. You let them take over. You let them erase me. You can't have both. You're seriously giving me an ultimatum? I looked him right in the eye. No. I'm giving you a choice. He didn't answer that night. The next morning, I woke up and saw him in the kitchen, arguing quietly with Celeste and Morrow. I didn't go down. By the afternoon, the suitcases were back by the front door. Celeste didn't look at me when they left. Morrow gave a stiff nod. Dorian carried their last box out to the car, then just stood there in the driveway. He came back inside, hands in his pockets. I didn't think you'd actually do it, he said quietly. I didn't either, I said. Do you still want me here? I paused. Not for drama. Just because I was really thinking about it. Then I said, you need to find somewhere else to stay. For now. He nodded. That night, he packed a duffel bag and left. No fight. No tears. Just gone. That was 7 months ago. Since then, a lot has changed. The city denied Celeste and Morrow's catering license. Lucerne at home was reported again, this time by a guest who claimed they'd gotten food poisoning. I didn't have anything to do with that one. Dorian moved into a one-bedroom across town. We text sometimes, but it's mostly about logistics. We've started the process of separating assets. Quietly. Without drama. As for me? I turned my kitchen into a personal studio. I launched my own food blog. Just me. My recipes. My voice. I named it Alina at Home. It's not a business. Not yet. But it's mine. And when people leave comments, they call me by name. They tell me my writing feels like sitting at a friend's kitchen table. Sometimes I bake that cherry clafoutis again. But I don't call it that anymore. I call it the legacy reclaimed. And this time, the only name in the recipe book is mine.